Good afternoon, everyone. We're really excited to have you join us today. For today's topic, we'll explore how to use Inflectra's SpiraPlan with Tricentis TOSCA to test complex business applications through an overview of both tools, as well as a live demo from our presenters today. So joining us today is Adam Sandman. Adam is the founder and CEO of Inflectra, a leading provider of software test management, application lifecycle management, and automation platforms, which includes SpiraPlan, which we'll be talking about today. Adam is responsible for product strategy, technology innovation, and business development at Inflectra. In addition, joining Adam today is Kayla Hildebrandt from TTC. Kayla is a manager at TTC with over 10 plus years of experience in QA, spanning across test automation, manual testing, and software lifecycle best practices within both traditional waterfall and dynamic agile environments. For today, Kayla's focus will be TOSCA and her experience in integrating both TOSCA tools and SpiraPlan for the topic today. And so we're really excited to have both Adam and Kayla joining us and showing us their experience with the tools. So before we begin, just a little bit about TTC. TTC was founded in 2004 and today is a leading software quality assurance services provider with hundreds of consultants across the globe and helping our clients globally, whether Fortune 500 organizations or mid-sized organizations which are growing as well. And so we work with our clients to provide testing as a service, whether it be through test automation or manual testing with open source or off-the-shelf and packaged applications and tools. We've helped uplift many of our clients by focusing on not only on technology, but the people and processes within the organization as well. One of these technologies includes Inflectra, which we'll be talking about today, and their tool called SpiraPlan for agile program and portfolio management. Here to tell us more about Inflectra is Adam Sandman. Adam?
Hello, thanks so much, Fong. Nice to meet everyone. So just a little bit of background on Inflectra before we get into the meat of today's demo. We'll see the actual applications live in all their glory. So Inflectra's been around since 2006, so I guess 2 years younger than TTC. And we're a software test management, project management, and application lifecycle management provider, as Fong mentioned. And our key focus is really on providing solutions for customers in different industries, particularly focusing on customers with complex business applications working in regulated industries. And in that regard, we deliver our software both cloud and on-premise, and we have the ability to host clients' data in different regions around the world, so we can take advantage of different privacy rules and be able to support customers with whatever their data residency requirements are. We have about 80,000 users in about 5,000 customers worldwide. Next slide, please. And the key differentiator, I think, for Inflectra and the key message we bring to bear is the idea of harmony. We want different audiences and personas in the software development and software testing space to work together seamlessly and in harmony. And for that, we bring people working in different disciplines together. We have software that helps business analysts, scrum masters, developers, testers, automation engineers, test analysts, functional experts, all to work together in a seamless way, both using our tools, but also integrating closely with other tools. So one of the key aspects of our mission is to work across different ecosystems. And you'll see that today with our integration with Tricentis TOSCA, but we also integrate with over 70 other different tools and platforms out there. So that way our companies can work together with other products, whatever's in their ecosystem. Next slide. We're going to be focusing today on our SpiraPlan product, but we do have a wider portfolio and offering than just that. Our platform consists of the Spira Foundation, which is the series of products that make up the SpiraPlan portfolio. SpiraPlan is the tool we'll be seeing today, which is our enterprise program and portfolio management tool. It's built on top of our Spira Team ALM solution, which is in turn built on top of our Spira test management tool. Those together are augmented by our ITSM solution Chronodesk, Spira Capture, which is the free tool for exploratory testing, and then Rapise, which is our own automation platform for test and process automation. Next slide, please. One of the key differentiators that SpiraPlan brings to bear versus a lot of other tools in our space will be the fact that we've integrated risk management and risk approaches and practices throughout the application, both for formal risk management, but also for risk-based testing and using risk assessments within the entire testing lifecycle. And we'll show you a little bit of that in the demonstration. Next slide, please. And for today's demonstration, we're going to be showing you how SpiraPlan integrates seamlessly with TOSCA, where a user would, for example, write automated scripts in TOSCA. They're going to upload them against a SpiraPlan test plan where we've defined some requirements and some test cases. We link those TOSCA automation tests to this test plan. We're going to run those tests from Spira within TOSCA, have the results come back to TOSCA and update the test coverage and the requirement status and show you the reporting. And so you'll see that end-to-end integration with the two tools working together harmoniously. Next slide. I think that's the last slide. And since PowerPoint is so dull, we can now move into the live application and see things in action. So hopefully you can see my screen. Can you see? Oh, hold on. Yep. Okay. Let me minimize GoToMeeting and get that out of the way. Oh. Okay, great. So this is SpiraPlan Live, the application. As I mentioned earlier on, it's available both cloud and on-premise. This is actually the cloud version, but if you're using the on-premise version, then it will look identical to this. It's the same functionality, same user interface, same APIs. And one of the key aspects that SpiraPlan brings is bringing those different threads together: requirements management, test management, project management, risk management, all working together as a whole. So when you come into SpiraPlan, you're going to see this dashboard. This is our general dashboard. It includes all those elements together. So you can see our risk matrix, where you can see the distribution of risks throughout the project. You can see all the open risks in the risk register. We're also tracking all the requirements and all of the features, supporting both a waterfall approach, where you might have system requirements and business requirements, or it could be an agile approach where you have features, epics, and stories. Whichever you're doing, we're tracking the completion of those requirements and stories against our schedule, and we have planning heuristics where we can show you, are you ahead of progress, behind progress? This is a demo system, so we're horribly behind schedule, unfortunately, because we're not in here frequently, but you can see our completion to date versus the schedule to date. We also include other key quality metrics. For example, the requirements test coverage is visible right here in these graphs. You can click through from these graphs right into the requirements part of the system. We also will track the metrics around the quality from a defect and deviation standpoint. Here's all your defects. Here's the counted defects, the distribution by priority. We can also show you which of those requirements are impacted by the defects. So from a risk standpoint, you can see which of your requirements are the most risky from a number of historical defects that have been tracked against them. In this case, they're all pretty even, 2s or 3s. But if you saw a requirement with 9 open defects or 9 total defects, that would imply that requirement has some structural issues that should be identified and resolved, rather than just fixing a bunch of bugs. We also include different views. So if you are a test manager, we've also got a more focused testing view where you can see all the test metrics, the test progress over time, the test activity over time, and you can see, are we heading towards improving our testing or are we getting worse? And so that way it gives you trending information as well as the current snapshot. These dashboards can all be filtered by release, by sprint, so you can drill down to the appropriate level in the team. In addition, Spira is part of a program or portfolio management system, so you can roll up to a program level or portfolio level to see additional information. So you can manage information at the project level, program level, portfolio level as well. So that's some of the information of the dashboards. SpiraPlan is a cross-artifact system that lets you track everything from requirements all the way through the life cycle to testing, to code, defects, risks, and tasks. I'm really going to give you a flavor today. We'll be doing more of this on other webinars, but just to give you a flavor, if you go into the requirements management section, you can track all of your requirements, again, whether it's waterfall, agile, or a hybrid. You can track the test coverage for each of the requirements. You can visualize it on an agile board as well, if that makes more sense for your project, if you're an agile project. So you can see things on a board like this with story cards and test cases. In addition to that, you can also then go into the testing module, and that's where you'll manage all the test cases, both manual and automated. So these are some manual test cases that you might run in the manual part of the system. You can go into a test case. You can view the test information. You can also view the individual test steps, which are right here. This is the manual scripts. You can also have reusable steps where you can have shared test steps and parameters. We also can manage the groups of tests that we call test sets. That's the different groups of tests that come together. So if we go into that, you can see we can have test sets. We'll be using these more when we go into the TOSCA side, but these test sets are basically the groups of tests that you'll either run as a package on an automated host machine for automation, or you might assign to a tester to run a group of tests manually. And once those tests are all set up, if it's automation you're doing, you will manage the different machines here in the automation host section. And then lastly, we can also do data-driven testing, where we can manage all the different test parameters and send those test parameters to the different automation tools. So you can manage that way different pieces of test data and have that be reusable across all your different test cases. This way you could run the same set of tests across different logins, browsers, and operating systems. Of course, when the tests fail, we do unfortunately log defects, because that's the nature of life. All the defects that are logged in the system will have traceability. These are the defects. They'll have traceability right back to the source requirements and source test cases they came from. So if a user finds a bug, you can go to the associations tab and see the test run it came from, the requirements and user stories it belongs to, any related defects or any related risks that go with it. So that way you've got end-to-end traceability and auditability right here in the system. Because we mentioned risks, I'll just quickly show you the risk tracking. Here's where you can manage all the risks in the system, tie those back to requirements and stories. You can also write test cases to experiment and verify risks. And we do track the probability and the impact and calculate automatically the exposure. So you can see how exposed you are to those different risks. And then the last piece of the puzzle is the fact we do support development and DevOps. We have integrations with different source code providers. We provide our own Git-based code repository, or you can connect it to other repositories like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. So wherever you're hosting your source code, we can connect SpiraPlan to that repository, or we can host it for you. And then you can track the changes in the repository, and you can tie those changes back to different activities. So for example, here's a commit we made, we fixed some bugs. Here's another commit where we implemented a feature that was then tested. We can click on that revision. So if we do find a test failure, we can even see not only the test failure, but the code changes that should have fixed the failure that maybe didn't, and we can then track the root cause analysis. So we can go down to the code level. And we do have integration with different pipeline tools, so you can do CI/CD, whether you're in GitLab, GitHub, Circle, Jenkins, Bamboo, TeamCity, we've got all those covered as well. So that's a quick overview of SpiraPlan. Lastly, we do have a full reporting engine where you can generate different documentation, different reports, including such things as a requirements traceability matrix. So the next thing we'll be doing is handing over to Kayla to talk about TOSCA. Just before we do that, the last piece will be when we go into the TOSCA section, we'll be running the test cases from a TOSCA project we've set up, and we've set up ahead of time some test cases and test sets where we'll be showing the automation integration with TOSCA. But before we do that, it'll be time to hand over to Kayla, who can give us an overview of the TOSCA automation tool.
Thanks, Adam. Also, everyone, just want a quick reminder, we've had several questions come through the chat while Kayla's setting up. If if there's anything that comes up or did come up during Adam's demo, please feel free to submit your question and we'll be sure to address towards the end of the webinar. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Are you able to see TOSCA on my screen? Excellent. All right. So going from the application lifecycle day-to-day tracking of your artifacts, this is where we start to talk a little bit about test automation. So automation in Tricentis TOSCA is model-based. So what do we mean when we say model-based? Model-based tests are reusable and maintainable without the requirement of code. So if you do not have that programming expertise available on your team, Tricentis TOSCA is a really good option for your existing users to start to create automation in TOSCA. So before we go back to the integration point, did want to do a bit of a walkthrough just with how these tests can come together in TOSCA. So before we work backwards and design a test, I do want to show you what a test case looks like in the TOSCA commander. So day to day, if you are a user in TOSCA, this is where you would be working. You can see I have some preconditions and you can see some really business readable language here. I'm launching my browser. I'm selecting, clicking on a link called automobile. I am entering some vehicle data. So make, BMW, engine performance. It's really easy to understand what's happening. So before we work backwards, I'm actually going to run my test in what we call a scratchbook, which is basically a way to debug your tests, make sure that they're working as you expect. Now I have Internet Explorer launching. I'm clicking on automobile. I'm not touching my keyboard. Entering some of my data, customer data, product data. There's actually a verification happening here against this table. We are submitting our quote. We're doing some validation to make sure it was submitted correctly. And that's it. And that's our test. It's pretty straightforward, right? So how does that test come together? I have another example here where we're going to, rather than reuse the elements that we've already created, which is what you would be doing day to day because you do want that element of reusability, we're going to walk through exactly how this test is built. So first, I'm going to have TOSCA launch my browser for me because I don't feel like clicking buttons. Okay, there's my browser. So what's the first thing that we would need to do in this test? We know that we need to click on truck. So rather than going through and creating code, creating a framework, all we have to do is create a model of this page. And so what is a model? So we're going to go to the second orange tab called modules. And I'm going to scan my application. And TOSCA is going to look for every application that I have open on my desktop. It'll probably pick up GoToMeeting first. Discovering my windows. Yep, Tristantis Vehicle Insurance, there's GoToMeeting. There's a couple other screens that I need. But we're going to select the Tristantis Vehicle Insurance website. I'm going to select only the controls from this screen that I need. I need automobile, truck, motorcycle, and camper. You can see as I'm mousing over the different elements of this screen, you can see that there's links, you can see that there's text boxes, you can see that there's buttons, different individual elements of my screen that TOSCA is able to see in the background and allow me to start to build my models. But you can see that the ones that I picked on, just these 4 links, are added to my window. So all I need to do now is click on Save. Ooh, finish my screen. Close this. Don't need that div, so I'm going to delete that. And there's my 4 links. So from here, all I need to do in order to add this to my test case is drag this from my models tab to my process folder on my test case, tell TOSCA that I want to click on truck. I'll run this, and that's it. That's my very first step in my test case in less than 5 minutes, or maybe right around. All right, and that's the first step in our test. So we'll do this one more time. And again, happy to answer any questions that you may have here, but just to walk through the process again, just because it's that quick, we'll scan our application. We'll build our second model. Enter vehicle data. And we'll do the same process one more time. But I'm intentionally going to leave off a couple fields because I do want to highlight some things here just around ease of maintenance and how easy it is to not only reuse information, but to keep any information up to date if something changes about your application. So I'm going to click on Save. Oops. I'm going to finish screen, close this. And this, again, I'm going to drag and drop enter vehicle data into my test case. And here's where I can start to enter some of that information. So let's say make is Audi. All of the information about the combo boxes was automatically picked up. I can start to enter my engine performance. I can start to enter my date of manufacture, number of seats, any of that business information that's part of my test. All I have to do is add that. So what happens if something changes, or what happens if you forget something? One thing I'd like to highlight here is that anywhere that I need to interact with this enter vehicle data screen, I can continue to drag and drop this module that I've created to a new test case. That way, anytime that something about that screen changes, I only have to make that change one time without dealing with any code, and that's applied to any test case in my regression suite. So let's say, for example, here, this field wasn't named very well. I want this to actually be called engine performance. Keep in mind I've already used this module in my test case. So if I update this name to engine performance, that update is also applied to my test case. Doing that again for date of manufacture. Done. All right. So what happens if a new button is added later, or if I forgot one? TOSCA also gives you the ability to rescan your application. So I'm just going to click on rescan from the context menu. Okay, TOSCA is going to be looking for the open screen. Looking for the module target. We found it. We're loading all of the information that we already know about this particular screen. And now we can just continue to add. So I'm going to click on Select on Screen. And I'm going to click on Next. Save. Close. And there, right with just a couple clicks, I've updated my module to include that Next button that we already needed. Pretty straightforward, right? One more thing I'd like to highlight before we move forward into execution and talking a little bit about how we can tie this back to SpiraPlan and the Spira platform. Wanted to highlight that there is also the capability to include data-driven testing. Again, with just a couple of clicks, you can take a test case that you've already created, add it to your third tab called Test Case Design, and very quickly, let me refresh this view. Oops. There we go. You have what is called a test sheet. And with just a couple more clicks, using what is called linear expansion, I can create all different combinations of data for a data-driven test. So reusing the same template, the same test case base, I can expand this to have hundreds of different combinations of data to really make sure that every combination of data that needs to be tested is covered. So just one more thing I wanted to highlight here. Yep. So with that, so that brings us to execution, and that brings us back to the integration point. So you've built your regression suite, and you want to make sure that all of your results are recorded back to your SpiraPlan instance. So here I have a regression suite, and this is a few different combinations of data based on the Tricentis Vehicle Insurance website. So here we can go to what is called, and this is where I also want to introduce distributed execution. So as part of the TOSCA server, there is a component called distributed execution, or DEX, that allows you to set up a set of test automation suites or scripts, or however you need to configure that, to be run automatically on a remote machine. So rather than taking up an individual user machine, you can have remote VMs that can take that automation, run it. I only have one set up here, but I've worked with companies that have quite a few more, and allow you to execute your automation remotely and get those results back very, very quickly. So with that, I'm actually going to go to my server machine, and this brings up Spira RemoteLaunch. So Adam?
So let me show, if it's okay, let me show them the setup piece, and then we'll have it running. So perfect. So as Kayla mentioned, what we've done to map into TOSCA is inside the test case, we've cut up a project in SpiraPlan to map to TOSCA. In this example, we've got just 3 test cases, and each of these corresponds to the different use cases, the Audi, the BMW, and the Honda that Kayla mentioned. And so inside of Spira, we have a plugin for TOSCA that comes free with SpiraPlan. And so you take your existing test case. It is mapped back to at least one requirement. So we've got a requirement called ability to create quotes for cars. And that's going to need to be tested 3 times, one for Audi or Audi, one for BMW, and one for Honda. And so what we do is we take this test case, and if you look down here in the automation section, we've chosen the TOSCA engine versus the other ones that are available. And what we do is we then point it to the appropriate test case and script within the TOSCA environment. So this maps to the folder structure that's inside TOSCA. That's all you have to do. Once that's done, you can save it, and then you combine these 2 or 3 different examples and different cases into a single SpiraPlan test set. And this is the test set here in the test set section. And here we've assembled those into a suite And the key is we've assigned it to the machine test host 1, which is actually Kayla's machine, and it's on a completely different network. So this is actually running in the cloud. So you can use this across any kind of different networks. It's very flexible, makes it very easy from an IT standpoint. So it makes the IT people happy. So that's the automation host that Kayla's going to be running on. These are the test cases. And all I have to do to make this happen is switch the status to not started and change the date. I'll leave it to be this because it'll run overdue tests or run immediately. And this will be your plan date. So you can schedule it here within SpiraPlan. You can pick a date or time. You can also specify a recurrent schedule. You can also specify it to run on a CI event on build. If you set this option, whenever a Jenkins or GitHub or GitLab pipeline completes successfully, it will auto schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And with that, it now should be ready for execution. So I can hand it back to Kayla. If you could change the presenter again.
Definitely. And exactly to what Adam just said, this TOSCA server is actually hosted on AWS. So again, easy to set up that infrastructure in the cloud, and exactly to Adam's point, really easy for IT teams to handle. Yeah.
So just do force poll, or you can wait.
Force poll?
Yeah. You can normally set to run every minute, but to avoid having to wait, we can make you accelerate things. But in a real life situation, you'd have it run every minute, and it will be set on a remote machine.
Yep, so this has launched the CI client, so now we are communicating with the DEX server on the TOSCA server right here. And I actually have a web interface that I can bring up here as well that will show us that could take a couple moments, but the DEX agent will be picking up that event that we've launched, and we'll be able to see the status of that execution here. Yep, and we can see that I think that might have been my last run, but I think that it usually takes a minute or so. So I think while we're waiting on this, I don't know if this would be a good opportunity to pause for questions, or Adam, I don't know if you had anything to add.
As it's running, as it starts to execute through TOSCA, the integration will start to report back test case by test case. So you can look at either TOSCA's web client, or you can look in the SpiraPlan web client, and you'll see activity. And once it's completed, you'll get an updated status in both tools. So it makes it really easy, whichever interface you're working in, to keep track of the progress in real time.
So it looks like that's been picked up by distributed execution. And it looks like the agent should be picking that up in a couple moments.
And while that's loading, Adam or Kayla, we did have one question come through from Greg. Greg asked us, does TOSCA only automate web applications?
No, that's an excellent question. So TOSCA actually will automate quite an impressive array of technologies. I know that I've personally worked on TOSCA with web applications or Salesforce, Oracle EBS, SAP, mobile database, tons and tons of application support there. So no, not just web.
Great, thanks. If we do have time for another question, we have a question came in from Tracy, I believe. Tracy asked, in regards to web browser, can TOSCA automate other web browsers, or was it just IE?
Another good question. So TOSCA can automate Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, and Edge. And there is actually, if we look back to TOSCA, there is a test configuration parameter that you can set as well to indicate what browser you'd like to run in, so you can change that very, very quickly. Okay.
Great, thank you.
So we have 1 pass and 3 remaining.
Yes.
Dun,
Yep.
dun, dun.
Yep.
We need the Jeopardy music.
Second one. These typically run at around 2.5 minutes, so it should pass fairly quickly.
While we're waiting, do you have any techniques you would recommend for when you have applications that are like some of the big ERP applications can be quite slow? Are there techniques you recommend for how to deal with applications that are slower and have slow response times?
That's an excellent question. So there are actually components built in directly to TOSCA that allow you to wait for something to become responsive, or wait for a page to load, wait for synchronization behavior. Again, that's all built in directly to TOSCA. So if you're going away from a code-based framework where a lot of that needs to be built in, or there's static waits or something, that's actually something that TOSCA does very, very well. And then when it comes to execution time, being able to have many of these remote DEX agents set up as a service right away. Makes it really easy for your test to execute fairly quickly. Okay, looks like we passed.
Yay. So all 4 passed, right?
Yep.
Okay, we should have the results. Let me,
Yep.
I can check.
I can share from the TOSCA side.
Yep, let's do that first, great.
Yep, so we have our latest results from TOSCA. So we can see that everything passed. We're just connecting to the database, making sure we have those latest results. And we can see here, we have a historical record of every time that this test has passed or failed, but we can see from our execution just now, everything passed. We can start to see some of our validations. We can see that it was successful, that it matched what we expected to see. But again, if you do have one of those executions that maybe something didn't match quite correctly, you're able to see that very easily from the TOSCA side, exactly what failed, what was a little bit off. And you can determine from there, is that something that you need to adjust in your automation, or is that something that you need to report back in SpiraPlan?
And with that, if you can hand me over, I can show you what it would look like on the other end.
Absolutely.
If you make it perfect, share my screen, and you can see the screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I've dialed back just a tad in the application. First thing you'd often be on is a dashboard. You come to this dashboard and you'll be like, oh wow, all my requirements have passed. Yay, this is really good. And you scroll down, you can see that we've actually had some tests failing in the past, and now they started working. So actually, before we did today's demo and the practice yesterday, the tests were failing, and now we got them fixed. So you can actually see that right here in the timeline. And then, of course, if you then drill down by clicking on either this or go into the requirements page, either way, you'll see we have this requirement, which is to create quotes for cars. It's green because it ran, and it ran all 3 tests that were required to run to make it passed. The second requirement, this is to create orders for cars. We haven't yet automated that, so that's listed as gray, not run. You can see the same thing here on this donut chart. And if we click on the requirement, we can drill from the requirement 1 level lower, and we can see the test coverage, and we can see that all 3 tests have passed, which is great. Now, sometimes it's useful to know, what is the history of that? Has it always passed? Is it a recent thing? Has it passed? Has it failed? Do we have a flaky test? So you can look into the test case. You can always see the current status, but you can also go to the test runs tab and see all the historical runs. And you can see we ran this previously in June and it failed twice, and now it's run both today and on yesterday's dry run. And we can track which versions were being tested. Maybe it's failed in release 2, passed in release 1, that kind of thing. You can track the type, the host it ran on. Maybe it ran on a different machine, so maybe test host 1 was good. So you can try and find it through our differentiators or browsers, things like that, which might be the reason why it's passed or failed. And when you do get into a run, you want to see what happened. You can then drill down to the last level and see the test run level, and that's going to get the detailed information from TOSCA. For a past run, it looks like this, where you can see the pass status, you can see the test that it belonged to, the test case it is from, the release we ran it in, could be other releases, of course. It was part of a CI build, this one was not. And you can then see step by step every action that was in that model that Kayla showed you, and the actions in the model. You can see the data that was entered in the model, and you can see exactly what happened to generate all these passes. And we have a copy here of the actual output from TOSCA. That's a pass, which is interesting, but usually it's more interesting to look at a failed case. So I'm going to go back in time to June, and you can see here we ran into an issue running it. The whole test case failed, but actually, if you look at it here in the summary, that's what happened. But step by step, we got as far as opening the browser. We were able to make a vehicle type selection. We put in some of the vehicle information, and we got as far as clicking next. And right after we click next, I think we had 2 tabs open, so that's what was confusing it. And so the error was 2 tabs open, couldn't make an exact match. So TOSCA came back as failed, and you can see here exactly where it failed. And then you would then drill into TOSCA to get more information. But that way, if you've got thousands of test cases on different machines, different environments, and SpiraPlan is your enterprise test management, you can go see all the information, manual, automated, exploratory, and then drill down and see what the failures are, and then take remedial action. And that's pretty much the end-to-end SpiraPlan with TOSCA.
Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We had a really big audience, and it seems like we just had so many questions. And if you still have questions after this webinar, we encourage you to either reach out to Adam or Kayla directly. We've presented their contact information here, adam.sandman@inflectra.com or kayla.hildebrand@ttcglobal.com. In addition, you're welcome to add them on LinkedIn or post any information on our company pages as well. And so we're really looking forward to hearing more from you. After this webinar, we should hear from us just for any additional follow-up information. And so, again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thanks again to Adam, Kayla, and also Audrey for moderating for us as well. And so we hope everyone has a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.